Hello, fantastic fellow Earthlings. Welcome to the second Damari Nolo Dispatch special. Today, I'm going to be talking about climate change. Yeah, we're going to be talking about this. This is one of those nasty topics that nobody wants to actually have a conversation about. But we are going to have a conversation about it today because we are not scared. And I really wish that thing would start working again. But anyway, we're going to jump right into an article that was brought to my attention by a friend who I do respect a lot. She is very much so on the left. We disagree on just about every solution possible, but we do agree on a lot of the problems that we're facing. And this is an article that she shared about how to get over baby fever by remembering that the earth is dying. That's not hyperbolic at all, is it? And it goes on in this article to talk about some legitimate things like, pollution. And then other things like the oceans are going to start boiling and everyone's going to bake to death. The earth's just going to turn into a giant oven. Let's talk about how that isn't true. Let's start by breaking down this idea that there is a 97% consensus among climate scientists that global warming and climate change are real and caused primarily by humans. We're going to go ahead and break that down by showing you this. If you're not familiar, this is a list of the 11,000 abstracts that were used in that study by John Cook. Yeah, we're just going to keep scrolling down through here. Yeah, it's a lot. There are a lot of abstracts. 11,000 abstracts that were looked at for John Cook's report. Out of these 11,000 abstracts, John Cook excluded 67% of them for not having a conclusion on what is causing climate change. That's over 8,000 papers from climate scientists where they did the science and they concluded we can't prove that humans are even contributing honestly to this. That's 67% of the abstracts said we can't even prove that human beings are contributing to the changes in our climate. Out of the 33%, the other articles that he did not exclude, 1.6 of them, 1.6% of the overall 11,000 abstracts say that climate change is real, it's driven by CO2, and that humans are the primary contributor of CO2. 1.6% of the 11,000 abstracts that he looked at actually said what he is claiming 97% of them did. 1.6 versus 97. Y'all tell me which one of those actually sounds like a consensus. That 67% of climate scientists can't even form a conclusion from a lack of evidence, or 1.6% did conclude something and therefore it must be gospel. Y'all really falling for that? Okay, so we know now that John Cook is full of crap. Whenever you hear someone say 97% of scientists agree, understand that is a lie. That is a flat out lie. I just show you the 11,000 abstracts that he looked at. Only 33% of them said that humans were contributing at all to the overall climate change. Only 33%. And y'all hear people out there all the time talking about how, this is the 97% consensus. That has been forever. They tried that the first time in 2006 with a survey of scientists, which less than, I think, 5% of them were even climate scientists. And, of course, got ridiculed, as they should have, for ever making that claim. And then John Cook decided, hey, hold my beer. I'm going to do this even further. I'm going to survey only climate scientists and say that 97% of them agree that humans are the leading driver of climate change, when only 1.6% of them do. 1.6. The IPCC is always talking about, well, it's 97% of the organizations agree. Yeah, but y'all don't even have consensus within your own organizations. It's a false claim. It is a false claim. And it's falling apart. It's falling apart. That's why I do Solar Weather News, is because way back when I was still part of the climate control debate, when I was given the option at I Acknowledge to either work on the climate control page. I almost said propaganda. When I was given the option to work either on the climate control page or the women's page, I ended up choosing the women's page, but I was very much involved in the climate change argument. I wanted to know what was going on. And because I kept being curious about it, I'm now told that I know nothing. And it's just falling apart, this entire idea, because the idea that Al Gore is putting forward, or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and we're going to come back to her toward the end of this, but what they're putting forward, these models of the 1.6%, are models that do not reflect all of solar forcing. So solar forcing is the amount of energy that the sun puts into our atmosphere to cause climate change. That's solar forcing. And for a long time, to boost the numbers of man-contributed climate change, anthropological something, I can't remember, but to bolster those numbers, these models would ignore X-spectrum forcing, and it would also ignore gamma ray forcing, just to inflate the number for anthropological forcing. And on top of reflecting the information dishonestly, I'm trying to get through this without flat out saying that they're doing it as a scam, because there are other people who are in the argument who are like, no, this is a scam. I'm trying to avoid that, but they are dishonestly representing the information on solar forcing, and on top of that, their models exclude solar cycles. You would think that would be one of the most important things to include, is solar cycles. Whether or not the sun is hotter makes the earth hotter. Like, that should be common sense, right? But it's actually, the U.S. Geological Society still denies that. That's called the electric universe theory. It's the idea that energy from the sun can actually affect energy on Earth, which is a no-brainer to most people. But if you don't take the solar cycles into account, you're not going to have an accurate model at all. And that's why, even as people are screaming about climate change, we're having unexpected ice growths in Antarctica. We have the shelves we're losing shelf material on the south side, but we're gaining shelf material everywhere else in Antarctica. If ice growth ended in Antarctica today, it would take 30 years to melt off enough to lose the gains that it has had in the past 20 years. Just think about that. Can you say that this is an honest debate when we're screaming about the ice sheets melting as the ice sheets are growing faster than they're melting? I mean, not just there. We've had this new trend in the Arctic as well, where you can see from about 1990, 1995 to 2010, that was the peak of our last cycle of solar maximum. And I understand we're in grand solar maximum. I'll show you what that looks like toward the end. But this is just looking at our current cycle. the peak ended in this time period, and you can see that there was a massive amount of loss of ice in that time. Well, solar minimum's coming back. We have the cycle again. It cools down, the sun cools down, and the winter produces a ridiculous amount of ice. Then we had a little bit of a flare-up going into 2015, and now we're back in a minimum, and it's starting to go back up. And isn't it a bit crazy to say that the oceans are going to start boiling and the earth is going to become an oven on which everything is baked, as both the Antarctic and the Arctic ice shelves are growing? Growing. Not shrinking anymore, growing. And we can look at the models, which most people don't even bother getting to this point. I only started looking at these things because I'm into electric universe theory. You start looking at the solar minimum and maximum models, and you realize, oh, it's just really warm, and that's what's driving all of these changes. And when you look at the models, you can see we are now dropping out of the grand maximum. We are going into cold territory. Now, it could be that we're going into a grand solar minimum, and that would be terrifying. It would be terrifying. That would genuinely wipe out more of our species than global warming is even predicted to, which is not going to happen. Global warming is not going to happen the way that they're saying it's going to happen. We're going into global cooling. And even if it's just a regular minimum, which I hope it's just a regular minimum. I don't want us to go into grand solar minimum. That would be catastrophic for the human species. But even with this, we're going to see drops in temperatures into a miniature ice age. Like, we're talking about a near glacial event down into places like Colorado and Montana, potentially. You know, we're talking near a glacial climate in Canada. You know, it's going to be very difficult to live in Canada for a while, up to 50 years. And if this isn't just a regular minimum, we're looking at like 10,000 years if we go into a grand solar minimum. I mean, hopefully we're not going into one of those. It looked like we had one recently. I haven't looked into that, when the last grand solar minimum was. But it kind of looks like we came out of one right before we went into the solar maximum. But if we do go into a grand solar minimum, it's going to be impossible to live north of Arkansas. You know, Europe is going to be right back to where it was, and we're going to be pretty bad off even without this being a grand minimum. We're still going to be really bad off even without it being a grand minimum. And okay. We really have to take the time to think about history and where we have been to figure out where we're going. Because the last time that we had a solar minimum, it ended in 1820. You know, Earth was cold between 1280 and 1820. And when we came out of it, you know, going into the early 20th century, it was already starting to warm. And in the early 20th century is when we started recording climate change. Well, not too long after that, we went into another solar maximum event in 1914. It starts melting the ice everywhere, and people start screaming about how this is all man-made, and we're still having that argument today, that humans are causing these weather patterns, and we are responsible for the warming. But that's not true. It's just patently not true. And I'm going to show that to you here. This is a linear graph from the Volstick. It's an Antarctic ice core. showing temperature and carbon dioxide correlation. Well, it is because carbon dioxide levels usually go up like that with temperatures because the temperatures are melting the ice. The more fresh water enters the ocean, the less solubility the carbon has in the ocean. And the ocean starts releasing that carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Now, those peaks that I was showing you in the graph earlier, those can be caused by underwater volcanic events. You know, the vents are just putting off too much carbon dioxide, and the ocean has to vent off that carbon dioxide anyway. But for the most part, the trend of the carbon releases always followed the temperature trend, where things heat up, the meltwater comes down, and then massive amounts of carbon have to come out to return the equilibrium of the solubility of the ocean. And let's just go back to that chart. Wouldn't it be nice if people on the left could do the same thing? To look at new information, unlearn, and relearn. It's not that difficult. I literally did it today in the process of researching this video. Okay. But I'm about to get a little bit hippy-dippy on y'all too, because we actually do have to take care of this planet that we all live on. I welcome y'all by saying hello, Earthlings, because I love this Earth. I love that we live here, and I would like us to be able to continue living here. Now, we can't control the sun. What the sun does is what the sun's going to do. I don't now, after having to look into this subject even further, believe that carbon dioxide is a threat really at all. It can contribute to weather, but it's not solid evidence out there. And there were a couple of guys who were trying to prove that climate change was real by setting up a fish tank and half of the fish tank was the control side, and then the other half of the fish tank was vinegar and baking soda sealed off to trap the carbon dioxide inside of it. And they had 2 lights on the outside of the fish tank going up into these 2 halves. And there were a number of times where the half of the fish tank that had the carbon dioxide in it was actually colder than the side that didn't have it in it. And then there were times that it was hotter, and they alternated. They actually alternated. It wasn't like just at first the fish tank with the carbon dioxide was colder, which it was at first, but even after it had gotten above temperature of the control side, it would still drop back down while the control side was going back up. So apparently it's not really that effective of a marker for climate change. And like I said, I had to learn that today myself. But there are genuine threats that we are facing. Genuine threats that we are facing as a society in the form of pollution. And we have to do something about that. Like, I hear y'all. Global warming is fake. Climate change is happening, but apparently not that man-made, if we have any real influence on it at all. But what we do have influence on is water quality. What we do have influence on is the amount of pollution that man is putting into the water supply. That actually does affect us. Like, okay, so let's go back to the display. Okay. We have so many toxic chemicals in the plastics that we are dumping into the ocean. We have animals that are dying left and right from not just like ingesting the trash, but from living in the polluted water that the trash has destroyed. And that's just the oceans. That's just the oceans. We are working towards getting the plastic cleaned up from the oceans, but we are not conscious about the threat level that comes with having all of these toxic chemicals in the ocean. I don't think most Americans even like comprehend the idea that plastic is actually toxic. Like, we eat with it, we eat off of it. People don't really correlate that if you actually eat it in a soluble form, it can kill you. It's toxic. And the longer that this stuff sits in the ocean, the more it breaks down. You know, it's entering the food supply of fish, which means we are going to be eating fish that are partially plastic because they keep eating plastic and it's getting integrated into them. Which means we're going to start having plastics integrated into us. And all of these toxic chemicals are going to eventually get to us through our food supply. And that means we actually have to do something about that. Thankfully, we're starting to do something about that. But there's something else that we're actually threatening to make significantly worse. And now I'm coming back to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the terrible ideas that come with the Green New Deal. So you're telling me that to avoid warming up the planet, when it's not even proven that we are warming up the planet, that the sun quite apparently has the majority role in climate change on Earth, to avoid that, we are going to switch over to battery-powered electric cars and wind turbines. Enough of them to power the entire Earth. Now, I want y'all to take just a second and think about rare earth mining and what it takes, because here is a list of all the things that they're used for. So, energy efficient light bulbs, part of the Green New Deal. These energy efficient screens, part of the Green New Deal. Wind turbines, Green New Deal. Hybrid vehicles, Green New Deal. Rechargeable batteries, Green New Deal. And then, of course, smartphones, iPods for the lavishing millennial who has decided that they are going to keep buying these nasty consumer products while simultaneously complaining about pollution. I see y'all. I see y'all. And when we look at this, just look at the costs. And this is just cost and economy to the villages in China where these rare earth mines rare earth mining operations are taking place. You know, it's destroying the forest, it's tearing up the land. On top of that, we have this article, also from China, about the heavy costs on the local villages. That used to be a lake. This used to be a lake, and now it's just a soup of toxic chemicals. Look at this. The shore is coated with a black crust so thick you can walk on it. It is sludge. It's all sludge. It's made up of the sludge from the mining operations itself, along with the chemicals they use to extract the rare earths that they use to make your precious freaking turbines in electric cars. Although I gotta tell you, I like Tesla. If they can figure out a way to make that car without the batteries, I would own one. But yeah, it's just nasty stuff that comes with rare earth mining. And now we're being told that because the cows fart too much, we're going to have to do this more and poison the earth more for Alexandria Occasional Cortex's Green New Deal. And that doesn't make sense to me. Does it make sense to you? Shouldn't make sense to you. And one of the reasons that this is even more idiotic, probably what makes this the most idiotic part of the Green New Deal, is that we are doing this to build wind turbines when there are two elements that are part of rare earth waste called uranium and thorium. Nuclear energy. What we could be doing is, instead of destroying the entire planet to build 1 billion wind turbines and enough batteries to sustain human travel across the planet indefinitely, we could just use the uranium and the thorium to offset our power and our energy costs. But nuclear energy isn't really part of the Green New Deal, is it? No. These days everyone's scared of nuclear energy because of what happened in Fukushima, and that is understandable. It should also kind of be a wake-up call for building nuclear reactors on some of the most unstable crust on the planet. But for the most part, American nuclear energy is safe. It is genuinely safe. And I'm talking about uranium energy. We're talking about high-pressure systems. We still find a way to make it a safe form of energy in the United States. If we switch over to thorium-based energy, there goes 90% of the problems with uranium-based energy. Thorium-based energy would be the cleanest form of energy on Earth if we would just invest in it. But no. Instead of that, Alexandria wants us to tear the Earth to pieces to dredge up enough rare earth mineral to build her army of AI electric cars and wind turbines. Why? I don't know. You have to ask her why she is so unintelligent about the actual facts that are going on, like the actual resources, the actual restrictions that we have. You'd have to ask her why she is ignorant about all of that. And maybe even ask your friends. Now that you've seen this, you can actually pull this up, send it to them. Ask them, why do you guys still believe this stuff? Why are you still on board with it? Probably because of social status. And why are the scientists on board with it? What of them do agree? Probably because they're getting grant money for it. You can say, oh, well, I couldn't find a conclusion on how human climate change or human forcing can change the climate, but that doesn't mean that I can't find it, so you'll have to give me some more funding. We all have to stop this. This level of dishonesty in this argument is appalling. Like, people on the left, stop lying about anthropological forcing and its effect on the climate. It's just not true. We can tell from the ice cores, it is not true. We are not having this effect on the planet. People on the right, please, for the love of God, be smarter about your consumption choices. Be smarter about investment. We have to come up with better energy sources and better technology, because we'll go back to that chart again. So where were you? Here we go. We need to get rid of a few of these things. We really do. We don't all need LCD screens. We don't need 4 of them in a house. We don't have to keep building missiles that we have to sell just because we can't use them, and even most of the time the people we sell them to can't even find a way to use them, and they just get torn apart and scrapped. We have to be more intelligent about our consumables. All of us have to be more intelligent about our consumables, because this is the real threat to our planet. This is the real and genuine threat to our species, to all species, is that if we continue polluting the water is just going to become acid. And y'all might be surprised to find this out, but you can't drink acid. And if we keep consuming at the level we are, or not even consuming at the level we are, because we can consume products, we just have to be smarter about the products that we're consuming. And I hope that everyone can get on board for that, at the very least. That we don't have to fix carbon dioxide, because the planet is about to fix that itself. It's about to start trapping the monoxide and dioxide again and adding it back to the glaciers. And eventually a solar maximum is going to come back around, and it's going to melt the glaciers, and the carbon's going to be released again. And then eventually a minimum is going to come back, and the ice is going to freeze, the carbon's going to freeze back into the ice, and it's just a cycle. It's just a cycle. We need to stop pretending that it's being caused by anthropological forcing. But this, the poisoning of the water systems, that is anthropological. That is us. We actually have to do something about that. Because if we don't, there ain't going to be water left to drink. There ain't going to be animals left in the water to eat. And we are going to collapse like a flat in a cupboard, laughing at the libs for believing in climate change caused by anthropologically forced carbon dioxide. We're going to be dying laughing at them for that, as we're drinking acid and we can't find no fish. I don't want to live in a world with no fish. I love that sushi too much. Y'all better correct yourselves and behave. Y'all don't mess with my sushi. But yeah, this is a genuine threat that we're facing. So next time that, and even if you're on the left, next time that your friends start bringing up carbon dioxide, just be like, look, that's all questionable. What we really need to focus on right now is waterway pollution. We need to focus on chemical pollution caused from mining. We need to focus on plastics pollutions. And hopefully, if y'all do that, while people like me on the right are going up to the people who are dying laughing at the libs for believing in climate change caused by anthropological carbon forcing, I go up to them and I'm just like, hey, look, I know that that's stupid, but there's the real threat that we're dealing with right here. We got to deal with chemical pollution. And hopefully, if enough people in the middle are like, hey, let's have a scientifically literate and cohesive conversation and deal with chemical pollution, and then we'll deal with the hypotheticals beyond that. Maybe we can actually stop the non-carbon acidification of the ocean, which would be good, because the ocean is going to let go of its carbon. The ocean can't let go of lithium and thorium and uranium. So we have to be better about that. And I'm hoping that this video will help y'all to get rid of a few of these products in your life. to cut down the demand, cut down the consumption, and get us back to a place where we have a healthy Earth. We can't help what the sun does. We can't help the cycle of carbon to an extent, but carbon's not even a big factor. What is a big factor for the survival of the human species is to find a way to stop polluting the rivers so much. Stop polluting fresh water, stop polluting ocean water. Because if we don't, Earth is going to be 70% acid, and we're not going to have a clue what to do. There won't be a real fixing it unless the markets can find a way to fix it. But I have not heard of a solution for what we do when all of the water on Earth becomes undrinkable. There is no solution to that. We just die. So let's take care of that and stop having this silly discussion about carbon dioxide and oceans boiling and pretending like the sun doesn't have cycles and pretending like the sun being hotter is not what makes the Earth hotter. We're better than this. We're better than this. At least we better be soon, because we're going to die if we don't get better than this. I think that's going to be it for me on this special. I love y'all. I do. Some of y'all I disagree with ridiculously, but I'm hoping that this conversation, this expose on what I've learned about climate in my years, ever since being offered a position on a climate administration for media, that y'all will see, you know, these things don't add up. And there are things that add up that we need to deal with first. And that is chemical pollution in the waterways. So hopefully you'll share this with your friends, and they'll join in as well. I love y'all. Have a fantastic day, fantastic night, depending on your particular geolocation on this beautiful planet that we all share. I love this Earth. Let's keep it, please. Let's keep it decent. Good stewardship. Y'all take care of yourselves as well, and I'll see you later.